Welcome to the Trinity Channel, ladies and gentlemen. We love to talk about all kinds of things here. We spend a lot of time talking about Christianity and Islam because these are two of the most important topics anyone could discuss. You've got Islam, you see what's going on in the world, and of course the solution for many of the problems in the world is the gospel. And so this is what we like to focus on. Tonight we have two guests. We have my good friend C.L. Edwards. How you doing, C.L.?
I am doing blessed and highly favored.
And just so everyone knows, we have two debates coming up this Saturday for people who are in Michigan, in the sort of Detroit metro area. We are, where are we debating at?
We're in the southeast area, so I mean, you know, if you're in
what's
Lansing,
the,
you can
the
still
city?
drive
What's
down.
the city? What's the
Westland. Westland.
Westland, and that is Harvest Bible Church?
Harvest Bible Church in Westland.
Harvest Bible Church in Westland, Michigan.
Yeah.
This Saturday, we have one in the afternoon at 2 o'clock p.m. You will be debating whether Muhammad is a prophet, whether Muhammad's a true prophet. And at 6 o'clock p.m., I will be debating, is ISIS Islamic? And I'm very happy that a Muslim, Osama Abdullah, is stepping up to the plate, and he's willing to defend the Prophet of Muhammad and willing to give his reasons why ISIS is not Islamic, and allowing me the opportunity to show why I believe that ISIS is thoroughly Islamic. Because normally people just call you racist when you start quoting the Quran and you know, backing up ISIS from an Islamic perspective. So that's actually relevant to what we're going to be discussing tonight. See, as I pointed out, there's a huge difference between someone who's actually going to step on stage and give arguments and evidence, knowing that someone on the opposing side is going to give arguments and evidence from an opposing viewpoint, and then trying to get to the bottom of things that way. There's a huge difference between that, where you know you're going to be criticized, where you know your views are going to be challenged and put to the test. There's a very big difference between that and what are called interfaith dialogues that are popular across the country. You see, the difference is in debates you are going to be challenged. If you lay out a claim and someone on the other side of the stage disagrees with that claim and can prove it wrong by quoting sources against you, that's what's going to happen. In interfaith dialogues, and just we're going to be speaking critically of interfaith dialogue. Just to be clear, I don't have a problem with interfaith dialogues. I have a problem with the use they're being put to. If you know, there are people who want to know about what Islam teaches. There are people who want to know what Judaism and Christianity teaches. I'm all for people getting on stage and explaining what their various faiths teach. I'm perfectly happy with that. But there is a strong element in America that is using interfaith dialogues as a means to deceive, right? So when a Christian gets on stage or a Jew gets on stage and starts talking about their faith, people assume, well, this person is telling the truth. He's not trying to deceive me. She's not trying to trick me about his or her religion. But with Islam, there is a problem. There's a problem in that there is a doctrine called taqiyya, where you can actually deceive unbelievers for certain purposes. And that's what these, the use that these interfaith dialogues are being put to for certain Muslims. I'm not saying all Muslims or Muslims in general. Certain Muslims are using interfaith dialogues to deceive people. And the most disturbing thing about all of this is not just that there's deception involved, but that the church, Christian churches, are playing a role by giving people who are just flat out deceivers a platform to come on and say, hey, we want you, they don't know this, but what they're actually doing is, we want you to come on stage and lie to our entire congregation about what Islam teaches, so that people can walk away thinking Islam does not teach what it actually teaches. And since this isn't a debate format, no one's going to challenge. A person in the audience might raise their hand or something like that, but no one on stage is going to actively refute the deception that's going on. And so what you have is, you have American churches inviting people who are just flat out lying about what Islam teaches, putting them on stage, giving them a platform, and then allowing these people to deceive their congregations. And then their congregations walk out misinformed and with all sorts of nonsense in their head about what Islam teaches. And the goal is to keep people from criticizing Islam so that when ISIS or Al-Qaeda go on about their business, the Muslim Brotherhood, as they go about carrying out the Islamic strategy for the world, people in the West are too dumb to know any better and know what's really going on. That's the goal. This brings us to our other guest. That's Dr. Bill Warner. And Dr. Bill Warner, you hear us?
I can hear you.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well, and I think we're going to have a great topic to discuss tonight because we certainly have enough material. We won't even touch but the peak of this problem with interfaith dialogue.
Now, we, CL and I want to discuss jihad for a few minutes, but just give us an idea, since you're familiar, and it seems to be whenever I'm on stage with a Muslim, it's almost always there have been one or two exceptions, but it's almost always for a debate. So what's going on? Just give us a little background with the interfaith dialogues, because I know you've been studying this for a while.
Well, unfortunately, I've had something to study, and here in Nashville, Tennessee, there's a lot of interfaith dialogue, and it's been going on for some time. We need to start out with, you've mentioned jihad. This is jihad of the tongue, and the problem is not the jihadist. The problem are these sacrificial victims who just walk right up and put their neck on the chopping block, intellectually, if you will. I like to say this: Nashville is sometimes called the buckle on the Bible Belt. Well, let me assure the world out there that if Nashville is the buckle on the Bible Belt, the church's pants are down around its ankles. It's tragic what goes on at these things. It reminds me of, everybody's seen a picture of a mother bird dropping food into the open mouth of the baby bird. That's the position of both the Jew and the Christian at these dialogues. So that's just an intro.
Yeah, I'd like you to explain a little bit, because interfaith dialogue sounds like something good, right? Look at the words. Interfaith.
I'm all for dialogue.
Interfaith and dialogue. We like, we like dialogue and different faiths dialogue. It's almost like multiculturalism. That sounds like a good thing. Oh, look, multiculturalism, different cultures. Oh, that sounds like a great thing. It's the use that these things are being put to. So tell us what an interfaith dialogue in Nashville, Tennessee would look like. You walk in, you sit down at this interfaith dialogue, and what goes on there?
Well, first off, there are speakers who are arranged, and all of these speakers know each other, because there's when you walk into a public event that's an interfaith dialogue, you may be a stranger to what's going on, but trust me, this is a play that is unfolding, that has been practiced and acted upon before. And what's going to happen is that Islam is going to be so grievously injured by the bitter insults that people such as you and I bring forth, or others. And so they're speaking to the audience as victims, because they have been so oppressed here in Islamic hating America. And then, of course, their Jewish brothers and sisters and their Christian brothers and sisters just sit there and listen in anguish that such suffering has had to take place here in America. So that's sort of the theme of it. You've already touched on the fact there is no debate. I've never seen dialogue formally defined, but it seems to be that no one will be offended except those who know the truth, and they're not allowed to speak. So that's just some intro there that, and like I say, I've been to various ones. I've been to interfaith dialogues at universities. I've been to them. Usually they're now settled into some left-wing church. And here in Nashville, Tennessee, you'll get 300 or 400 people who show up, which is an important number we'll come back to later.
All right, so there are people who want interfaith dialogue, and the goal there is to present Muslims as the victims. And what's interesting is, if you look to the history of Islam, you find that exact same pattern going back to the very beginning. And this will bring us to Muhammad, when he was in Mecca. Who is he? He's the persecuted prophet. He's the victim of these pagan persecutors. And the people of Medina see this, because he's being represented as the persecuted prophet. And by the way, we know from the Sirah, he was trying to form an army even when he was in Mecca. He was asking the Quraysh tribe, join me and we will rule over the non-Arabs, right? So he's talking about ruling over the Persians and the Christians and the Jews. He's talking about conquering them while he's the persecuted prophet. Wait a minute. If he wants peace and tolerance, why is he saying behind the scenes, join me so we can go conquer people, right? So if he doesn't really believe in peace and tolerance and he actually wants to conquer, why is he proclaiming peace and tolerance? Well, because that's what's in his best interest if you're in that position. When you're in the minority, what's in your best interest is to claim to be a victim, because that wins sympathy, it stops you from being criticized. And what happened? The people of Medina, Muhammad, come here, we will protect you. And as soon as he got there, well then, the message of Islam suddenly changed once he had some protection and had more followers. CL, you're a Salafi. Am I making any of this up?
No, you're not making it up. That is what you find. You can go to any Islamic bookstore or online to any bookstore and get a biography of Muhammad written by Muslims for Muslims, and you can read all of this plainly.
And by the way, that would be, you mentioned biography for Muslims. That'll be very different from a biography written by Karen Armstrong for non-Muslims, right? Yeah, be very, very different. Totally different picture. But give us an idea. How does Islam basically work when it comes to jihad? Because we're told Islam's all peaceful and tolerant, and only if someone's actually going out and attacking the Muslim community, it would only be fighting in self-defense. That's what we hear.
Well, as you know, that there are two aspects to Islam. There's the Quran and there's the Sunnah. And the Sunnah are the means and the actions and the ways of Muhammad. And as a Muslim, you are taught that the way you do things, you don't just follow any methodology. You don't just make up any way. You look to the Sunnah. You look to what Muhammad did as the methodology to shape how you're going. So when you go back and you look at this biography, or look at any biography written by Muslims, for Muslims, you see some of the things that you said. When he was with the Quraysh, his own tribespeople, and he started saying that I am a Muslim, even though there were 5 other people in Arabia at the time saying they were Muslim prophets also. But that's another thing. He did win sympathy from certain people, from some of his own tribespeople, some of his uncle and some of his cousins. And the people in the Quraysh, they did try to protect him. And he did play the role of I am the victim, and we are the oppressed minority in this society, and now we have to flee and go to Medina. And then he goes to Medina, and basically the keys of the city are handed to him. In Medina, the keys of the city are handed to him, and
it really worked, right? Even though he's trying to form an army, can't do it, it's not working. He wants to conquer, he wants to subjugate. People really buy I'm an oppressed victim here.
Yes, and if I am a jihadi, if I am a Muslim who believes in jihad's in the Quran and in the Sunnah, but I'm a minority, and I'm in a place in a non-Muslim area, a non-Muslim nation. Where am I going to look to find a methodology to gain some power or to be able to fight jihad the way I really want to? Well, I'm going to look to the biography of Muhammad. I'm going to look to the Sunnah, and I'm going to look to what he did in Mecca, and I'm going to follow the playbook, as you called it earlier. Why not play the role of the victimized, oppressed minority? I'm not saying that no one who is Muslim ever gets oppressed or attacked or discriminated against. Of course, it probably does happen. But there's a difference between that and using that as a stratagem, using that as like a mocker, using a stratagem to gain your way. So of course you're going to do that. And this is not something that anyone is making up or accusing and just trying to be mean-spirited and putting it upon Islam. Every Muslim may not know about it. Every Muslim may not be involved in it. But it is in the Quran and it is in the Sunnah. And there are Muslims and Muslim organizations who are following the Quran and Sunnah in this area.
Now let me just, putting all this together and to clarify, let me give a quick sort of 3-stage outline of how jihad works. And you can look around to any country in the world. Matter of fact, You can look around to any country in the world. Don't tell me what the country is. Tell me the percentage of Muslims in that population. I will tell you what's being proclaimed as the message of Islam in that country. Right? So take, for instance, a country like the United States, where Muslims make up a very small percentage of the population. What's the message of Islam? Peace and tolerance. Go to a place where Islam makes up 20, 30% of the population. Not enough to subjugate the entire nation, but enough to really cause some problems for anyone who dares criticize Islam or draw cartoons about Muhammad or anything like that. You will see what's called defensive jihad. You have to. There will be violent repercussions if you do something that is offensive to Muslims. There will be slaughters. There could be riots. But there will be very violent repercussions for anyone who does something that's offensive to Muslims. If you get to a place that's 60, 70, 80, 90% Muslim population, then everyone has to be subjugated. Non-Muslims are going to have to be second-class citizens. And as CL was pointing out, you go back to the example. This is exactly what Muhammad did. When Muhammad's the persecuted prophet in Mecca, peace and tolerance, everyone. It's all about peace and tolerance. That's what I'm all about, even though behind closed doors I'm trying to build an army. Later, when Muhammad moved to Medina, he had various groups that had agreed to protect him. He's winning more followers. He starts by robbing the Meccan caravans because the Meccans had persecuted him. Notice it's justified because it's defensive. Someone had done something to Muhammad, therefore the Muslims get to do something back to them. But it's much broader than our sense of defense, because even criticizing Muhammad could get you killed and would often get you killed in Medina. If you make fun of Muhammad, make fun of Islam, someone's going to come kill you at night. But that's defensive jihad. Lots of Muslims will pretend that's the end of the story. If you do something to Islam, we get to defend ourselves. Wrong. Wrong. That's not the end of the story, because later on, when Muhammad has the most powerful force in Arabia, the message changes yet again to what we might call offensive jihad. Actively subjugating the unbelievers. If you're Christians and Jews, you have the option of paying the jizya or being subjugated or converting or dying. If you're a pagan, you have the option of converting or dying. But everyone is going to submit to the authority of Islam. Everyone's going to be forced to submit to Sharia. So there are different types of jihadists in this world, following this pattern that goes back to Muhammad himself, a pattern that has been going on for 14 centuries because Muslims have had the same playbook all along, and we still can't figure it out. Our leaders still can't figure it out. But here's the playbook. If you're a Muslim, you want to know what you should do, how you can fight to defend the Muslim community, depends on what situation you're in. If you are in a place like the United States, you are to be a stealth jihadist. Stealth jihadist. That's what you need to do. There, you're not actively going out and fighting, but you are protecting Islam by convincing people that they shouldn't be criticizing it. If you're in a different place, you might be a defensive jihadist. Al-Qaeda, for instance, as awful as they are, primarily focuses on defensive jihad. You have to do something for them to want to come and blow your buildings up. You have to do something to the Islamic community somewhere, usually for Al-Qaeda to come after you. That's very different from offensive jihadists like ISIS, who are, hey, we're in a position to subjugate, now we get to go out and subjugate. Very different people doing very different things, all following the pattern that goes back to one individual, and that's Muhammad. So that's how things work. Here we are in the United States. Again, Muslims have been using the same playbook for 14 centuries, and here we are in the United States of America, where, according to the playbook, according to the Quran and the Sunnah, Muslims who are in the United States should be adopting a method of stealth jihad, trying to convince us, trying to deceive us about the intentions and goals of Islam so that we are lulled to sleep, we are lulled into apathy, we aren't worried about what's going on in the world, playing the victims, that sort of thing. That's what Muslims are supposed to do. You can read it right in the Quran, you can read it right in the Hadith, you can read it right in the Sirah, you can read it in all kinds of Muslim manuals and so on. It's the pattern you find in the life of Muhammad. So any 4 or 5-year-old could understand this, and yet the American church says, come on, practice your stealth jihad with our congregation. We are inviting you in to do exactly what your religion teaches you to do, and we just can't figure this out. All right, Dr. Warner, CL and I will share more on jihad as we go along. But before we get to the break, I think we have about 8 minutes or so. What do you think about all this, about the relationship between what Islam teaches and what we actually see, especially in your area?
You're dead on. By the way, as just a little sidebar, my favorite victim story of Islam is Muhammad, when he was in Medina, it took him 8 tries before he was successful in his jihad attempts to attack the Meccan caravans. After 8 tries, he is still the victim. The Quran says so itself. So, I mean, I've always loved that little example of 8 separate tries, and yet when he kills and kidnaps and steals, he's still the victim. So that this victim business is carried on in the interfaith dialogues here. I've seen it again and again. One of the ones that comes to my mind is there is a Lipscomb University, which is a Church of Christ university. At least it still is. By the way, as a sidebar, let me ask you this. Have you ever noticed that some of the greatest betrayers of our civilization today are all former church schools? Vanderbilt, Harvard, Yale, Georgetown. I find that truly ironic. So when I'm sitting here at Lipscomb University and I'm watching a woman talk about how Islam was the first to give women their rights, and here you have an audience at this Christian school and they're just lapping this up. And by the way, we need to understand something here that's changed in dialogues. My earliest dialogue at Lipscomb University was given by, it wasn't really a dialogue, there was a Church of Christ minister who had taken up the cause of Sharia finance. And he was explaining to us that Sharia finance was ethical financing. I mean, he was doing the work for Muhammad. Now, this was in the early days, and we were able to ask so many questions that we basically blew him off the stage, and he looked like a fool, which he was. No longer at these dialogues, it's the one that was given on women's rights. No. We don't have any more questions from the floor here in Nashville, ever, because the questions were too sharp and too informed. So now then what you have to do is, you may have seen this in your area, is you have to write your questions down on a 3x5 card, and then they select which questions they will ask. So that's been one evolution in the dialogue business, is that you don't get to really ask questions. But this is another part of this mother bird dropping the food into the baby bird's open mouth. Now, you can also know that if there's something horrendous that enters the Islamic sphere, we'll call Islamic State something horrendous, you know that soon thereafter we're going to get a family of Abraham. You must have heard this concept, David, the family of Abraham, which teaches that the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims are all just kind of like spiritual brothers and sisters, So we know that as soon as something horrendous happens, and yes, we have at the end of the winter our next Family of Abraham event, and it will be, you've brought up this playbook, which is 1,400 years old. It is extraordinary. If you think you're going to see something new, you will not at any of these. And why should there be anything new, David? It's been working for 1,400 years. These sophisticated fools who are clergymen are doing the work for them, and they never read the playbook. I've tried explaining the playbook to some of these people, and, well, all they say about me, and I've been told this to my face at a dialogue table with some Jews, is that I'm a bigot, I'm a hater. It's people like me who are the reasons that causes violence in Islam. If everybody just loved the Muslims as much as these gentlemen love the Muslims, we would have peace and harmony throughout the earth. And then what they're going to do at these interfaith dialogues is they're going to love these people so much, David, that we'll be friends forever. If people like me, and they don't know you, but they would include you as well, didn't start talking about the truth and the facts of the matter.
And you're exactly right, and it would be interesting to adopt that as a military strategy for these groups, these various tribes and so on that are trying to defend themselves against ISIS. Look, we need to change the methodology. Don't give them weapons or train them. Well, don't train them to fight. You need to train them to smile more, to reach out and greet ISIS, because at the end of the day, ISIS just has hurt feelings. And
yes.
If you just go out and show them that you're on their side, you love them, you want to help, you just want to exist in harmony, well, as they're marching out to kill you and slaughter you and rape your women, their hearts will melt. They'll realize that, you know, that violence isn't the way, and we'll all embrace. And so that's the pattern we see here in the United States. And boy, it would be nice if that pattern were around the world. But what's really interesting, and I guess we should do a caller before we go to the break. But it's just so incredibly disturbing that this gets laid down as the solution to the world's problems. When, I mean, think about it. I mean, who is being helped by this? Who is being helped by this? You're not improving the situation of Muslims in America. I mean, you can literally blow up buildings here and we will still not criticize your religion. We are insanely tolerant. And we get represented as the horrible, evil oppressors. But you know, people are actually doing what Islam commands. Well, if I report what the Quran says on this issue, you are, as you pointed out, you're a bigot. You're a bigot for saying, here's what the Quran says. You know, I think these interfaith communities, I think we should take up a collection and let them produce their own Quran and their own collection of the Sunnah, where they can take out all the parts that they don't like and put that forward and try to use that to convince ISIS that that's true Islam. So they can take out all the parts that actually support ISIS. What's up?
They already do that.
Unfortunately, David, you'd be left with a thin book.
Yeah, especially Ibn Asaq. You take out the violent parts of that, you're left with like a little comic book or something like that. All right, let's. I don't know if we'll have time to answer the question, to answer our caller's question, but let's get the question now, and then maybe we'll have to answer it at the break. Who do we have on the line?
Sam Khan.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you, David?
Good. We're good. What's your question or comment?
Hey, my comment is that I am so excited to watch this show, but I've been waiting for this kind of show, and especially you, David. You are a blessing to that channel, and you are a blessing to us. We've learned so much from you. I am from Pakistan, and we've learned things that we've not learned being Pakistani. But thank goodness you are there. My question to you is, why do Christians are always willing to give ground to Muslims based on their faith, and we are always willing to accept what they tell us to accept, and we like to have interfaith dialogue with them. And when we know what did Europe is very popular or famous for interfaith, and look what happened, Muslims have taken over, at least in London. And why is it biblical for us to compromise our faith because we want to appease them? Is this biblical to always, I mean, they want to subjugate us no matter what. But then we are willing to go that route where they can easily subjugate us. And the other thing is, we being in East or Pakistanians or Indians, all those poor people are willing to stand up for their faith, but you come to Europe and America, people are not that strong in their faith, and they are always willing to give Muslims more ground, or jihadis more ground, so they can subjugate us.
Hey, brother.
Yeah.
Brother, we have to take a break, but I'd like you to stay on the line because we'd like you to share a little bit more about how things are in background, because it's a perfect illustration of how Islam actually works. So please stay on the line while we take a break. We want to remind everyone real quick that the Trinity Channel is having a fundraiser. If you're not supporting the Trinity Channel out there, please do so. They need your support. They need new equipment. We would love to have more shows. We would love to have more shows, but all of this requires support. It's fully donor funded, so the more support we get, the more we can do here. So please keep that in mind, and we'll be back in just a moment here to discuss this issue further here on the Trinity Channel.
The Big Big Donation Week starts December 14th through the 20th. Please be sure to join ABN and the Trinity Channel hand in hand to make a difference in the world. We will be airing live shows with multiple Christian apologetic speakers where you can call in at 248-416-1300. Stay here with us and don't change that channel. On December 18th through the 20th, Trinity Channel will be airing new live shows starring Dr. Bill Warner. For more information, visit us at www.trinitychannel.com or call us at 248-416-1300. Be sure to stay tuned so we can hear from viewers like you.
Welcome back to our discussion of interfaith dialogue, something that seems like an excellent idea, and in lots of circumstances that would be a great idea. It would be great if people can have an open, honest discussion about similarities and differences in our religions, but when these interfaith dialogues are used for a sinister agenda, things are a bit different. And our caller asked an important question, and that is, why are Christians always giving ground? Is this biblical? And I want to say that what we see, a lot of the problems we see are a case of Christian values gone mad, or Christian values just gone wild. You see, tolerance is normally a good thing, right? Loving other people is a good thing, right? So we want to love other people. We want to have compassion for other people. We don't want to run around killing people for disagreeing with us on various things. So that's good. Christianity promotes that kind of tolerance. But we take it so far that it means that we can't pretend that we have disagreements. And notice, when you go that far, when you pretend we don't have, now you're delving into just absolute nonsense, right? It's false. It's false that we don't, it's false to claim that we don't have any differences of ideology with Muslims or with others. And what's really bad about this, the good sort of tolerance would allow us to have open, honest discussions, because we're not going to run out and kill each other afterwards, right? That's genuine tolerance means, look, we can get up on stage like we're going to do on Saturday. We're going to get on stage. CL here you're going to be blasting Muhammad, aren't you? You're going to be blasting Muhammad? I don't know what you're going to say, but you're going to be blasting Muhammad, aren't you?
Well, I'm going to be disagreeing with the fact that he is a prophet.
I'm going to be blasting Islam on violence and jihad. And what's great is, even though our opponent, Osama Abdullah, is going to be disagreeing with us, and even though he attacks Christianity regularly, we're not going to walk out of there and killing each other. We actually have an important sort of tolerance. We can disagree on the most fundamental issues, and no one's going to get hurt or killed over it. That's the sort of tolerance we want to have. But when it's, oh, we can't disagree because we might hurt people's feelings about things, and then everyone might start persecuting and attacking each other, we're supposed to be past that. We're supposed to be past that, and you've got groups like CARE who are trying to bring that back, right? They're trying to bring, because why? In places like the Middle East or Pakistan, it is like that. A disagreement over opinion or view or ideology results in people getting killed and slaughtered. And so they bring that mentality with them, groups like CARE, and they want it here because they want us all to think, hey, if you disagree with us, if you criticize our view, if you criticize Muhammad, it's going to lead to a bloodbath. Never actually happens, but that's the concern. That's why we're victims here. And if you keep criticizing Islam, if you learn what the Quran says, it's going to lead to tons of Muslims getting killed and slaughtered, and you don't want to do that as a nice Christian. So keep your mouth shut. Believe what we tell you to believe. And CL, is that the Christian position that in order to not hurt people's feelings or not to bother them, we just need to keep quiet, even with the truth?
It wasn't the position of Jesus, and I think he's probably
he upset people wherever he went, right?
He upset a lot of people. And it wasn't the position of the apostles. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the position of Stephen. Look at Stephen. Who was more tolerant, who was more kind, who was more spoke kindly to others. Yet he didn't give 1 inch with the Jews when it came to Jesus being the Messiah. And he got stoned for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy, I'm not calling people to get stoned, but I'm using him as an example. We have 1 Peter 3:15, which gives us a commandment to defend the faith with gentleness and reverence. Yes, gentleness and reverence, but to still defend the faith. And the early church fathers, they obviously understood that to mean to oppose heresy and to oppose anything that opposed the Messiah, because that's what they did. So I don't think Christians have been wrong for the last 2,000 years.
So part of, if you're talking to a Muslim who believes that Jesus didn't die on the cross, didn't rise from the dead, and only claimed to be a prophet of Islam, biblically, because the question was, is it biblical? Biblically, you should be refuting those views.
Yes, you should. You should be showing him with kindness and tolerance why he is completely wrong and why Muhammad lied and is not a prophet.
And so that would be sort of gospel considerations, but you have these sort of global and political considerations. But think about this, because when you're saying, hey, we need to be tolerant to avoid hurting people's feelings and things like that, you're not talking about hurting the feelings of members of ISIS. You're talking about the nice Muslim who lives down the street, who's never hurt anyone, isn't waging jihad, really believes that Islam is peaceful. And why do you want to tell that person that Islam is actually violent and calls for the subjugation? Why do you want to hurt that person's feelings? But think about this. Is that really tolerant? Think about it. That nice Muslim who lives down the street is being used by Islam to guard Islam from criticism, while groups like ISIS go around killing, slaughtering, beheading, raping. And this Muslim, the nice Muslim who lives down the street from you, who doesn't approve of any of that, is totally wrong from an Islamic perspective for opposing that sort of thing, because that's exactly what Muhammad and his followers did. So this Muslim, the nice Muslim, the peaceful Muslim, doesn't know what his or her religion teaches, or has radically reinterpreted it to something that's completely unrecognizable. That person is being used to guard the people who are actually doing it and killing and slaughtering and raping. And you think you're being a nice person for allowing that person for his or her entire life to be used to defend rape and beheading and killing and slaughtering. You think you're doing that person a favor? Look, ladies and gentlemen, if I'm being used for that sort of purpose, please tell me. Please don't worry about my feelings. Tell me, David, you are being used for a radical agenda that is the most heinous thing going on in the world right now, and you are being used by it. Don't worry about my feelings, ladies and gentlemen. If you have peaceful, tolerant Muslim friends, I mean, is it really loving? Are you being a good friend to allow your friend to be used his entire life, her entire life, by this ideology? No. From a religious perspective, this person is wrong. This person is not doing what Islam actually commands, so the person isn't even actually following it. You're just telling the person. You're just informing the person, hey, you think you're following Islam, but you're not. Why would that be a problem? I don't know. I mean, look, ladies and gentlemen, if my mother's about to walk off a cliff, I'm going to tell her. I'm going to warn her. I'm going to warn her. Why? Well, what if I hurt her feelings? Look, what if I hurt her feelings by yelling, Mom, stop, we're about to walk off a cliff? Well, what's the goal? What's the goal here? And if your goal is to inform people what Islam teaches so that they are not used like this, how can you regard that as bad? And yet, that's what's being proclaimed at these interfaith dialogues. Any open, honest discussion of Islam is bad and evil and a symptom of bigotry and hatred and Islamophobia. Therefore, be a good person and pretend that Islam doesn't teach these things, and pretend that all the people who are doing exactly what Muhammad did aren't doing what Muhammad did. Let's just build up this fictional fantasy land, and that's what good people need to do. We need to just put ourselves in a bubble of ignorance and deception, and that's what good people do. No, that's not what good people do. That's not what good people do. What do you think?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to it, and a lot of it is in a worldview that is not Christian or biblical at all, that Christians feel pressured to conform to. Just like there are other subjects and other categories where we're being pressured to feel like we have to conform to this idea of tolerance, we're not going to get into that. That's not the subject of today. But in this subject here of Muslims and interfaith dialogue, that same exact spirit, that same exact idea of if you display this tolerance, that is the solution for fighting between us, disagreement. You're going to stop the wars, you're going to stop jihad, you're going to stop everything, you're going to cause peace if you just display this tolerance. And tolerance just so happens to be giving an inch, giving a foot, giving a mile, starting off any type of dialogue with the presupposition that you're okay, I'm okay, let's just sit here and just be friends.
Yeah, and we need to be honest here. Those of you in the West, you Christian leaders, you church leaders, you pastors who are helping guard Islam from criticism, you play a role. You play a role in what's going on in the Middle East right now. You are playing a role in what ISIS is doing right now. I'm convinced that if we were allowed to openly, honestly discuss Islam, you wouldn't have people converting to Islam. You'd have some very strange people, but I've never in my life met a person who converted to Islam after carefully studying it. It's all people who believe some sort of nonsense they heard, and then go out and convert to it. But I mean, think about this: people convert here in the West and go out and blow themselves up, right? They go over to the Middle East and end up blowing themselves up. Why did these people come to believe Islam? Because we are not allowed to criticize it. If these people had heard the truth, if they'd heard the truth about Muhammad, I'm convinced that none of these people, again, based on the fact that I've never met a person who converted to Islam after studying it, I conclude probably people who really study Islam don't convert to it. And therefore, if the facts about Muhammad were open, honest, I mean, if these were open, then if these were out in the open, if people knew the basic facts about Muhammad, I'm convinced that we wouldn't see these people going out and sacrificing themselves. So what the American church is doing is playing. This is not just you being friends. These are life and death matters. They're not life and death for you. You're going to be fine if you have people to your church and so on. But the result is, the longer this ideology continues to do what its founder commanded to do, you get what? You get violence and killing and slaughtering and rape, and this is what you get. And we're protecting it here in America. We're protecting it from criticism. Think about that. By protecting Islam, you are protecting what Islam teaches and what actually happens in the world. All right, we have, who do we have? We have a new caller, or we have Amani. We have Amani on the line? We lost the other caller. Amani, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you, David?
Good, good.
Good. I'm calling because I have a concern about a store. It's in Canada. I am calling from Canada, and you have it in U.S. Its name is J. Crew Stores. In their display, they have ornament that says Mary whatever, which is very offensive to Christians. And we're really upset about this, and we're asking them to take Mary whatever from their display all over the world. So can you help me with that, David?
I didn't understand. So they have, you said a J. Crew store?
J. Crew store, they have on their window a display, an ornament that says Merry whatever, and instead of Merry Christmas.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah, so we need them to stop that right away because it's insulting the Christians, and it's not right to be done.
Oh, well, I mean, we're going to have a difference here. If you have a problem with what J. Crew is doing, and obviously they're trying to be provocative there. But you can tell them you're not going to shop there anymore.
Actually, we did, but they're not listening.
Okay, well, I mean, then there's nothing you can do. I mean, in Canada they're allowed to do that sort of thing. But you're pointing out something.
But you have in U.S. stores as well, and they have the same ornament. Yeah, in New York.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So so yeah, you can say that, but think about sort of bringing it back to what we have here. I guarantee you they wouldn't say something about Ramadan, right? They're not going to offend anyone about Ramadan or about anything to do with Muhammad, right? So you can say something, making fun of Christmas or something like that, but you're not going to do anything on the other side, right?
No, I mean, that's just and unfortunately, that's the zeitgeist of the society at the moment. That's just a popular way of thinking. For some reason, a lot of people in the media and the different businesses, they think it's cool or it's a good marketing tool to be provocative and use Christianity in their provocation. But they would never do that with Islam.
And it's kind of Amani, think about this. These sort of slaps in the face. In the face that they in the faith in the faith and in the face that we get, they're kind of backhanded compliments, right? We know you Christians aren't going to kill and slaughter us over this, so we'll make fun of you. And this is all over the place. The Simpsons will make fun of Christianity left and right. They're not going to make fun of Islam. So these are kind of be happy that you're kind of getting a compliment here. We will make fun of you Christians. We're not going to make fun of. We're not going to hurt the feelings of Muslims, but yeah, let me get Dr. Warner back here, because this is very related actually to the topic of interfaith dialogues. We don't have people running around the country trying to convince us that Christianity is good, and hey, people are criticizing Christianity. We're such victims here. We're worried about a mass slaughter of Christians, and if we don't guard Christianity from criticism, then it's going to be a bloodbath. And so we're such victims here. People criticize Christianity left and right. We all understand. Hey, you're probably not going to go on a killing spree, and so we're safe even though we're being criticized. But in Islam, we're not safe if anyone's criticizing us, and therefore we need protection. And why are people falling for this?
Well, one of the things I would like to make an observation, because we've been talking about basically what I call idiot compassion. Mm-hmm. Compassion without wisdom can become just foolish compassion. And this all comes out of, now, Nashville, Tennessee is a very religious town, at least on the surface. But what has happened is that scriptures are studied less and less. Instead, I argue that in Nashville, Christianity has compressed itself down to only 2 syllables. Be nice. Be nice. And that's basically has become the new gospel of Christianity here in Tennessee. Everyone is so nice that they won't even do things like use the truth to straighten out error. We're talking about dialogues. I believe that if you read the Gospels, that Jesus was involved in dialogue, but he was not involved in the kind of dialogue we have here. He differed in several ways. Number one, he spoke only the facts and the truth. When he showed up for these dialogues, as with the Pharisees, he knew more about the subject than anyone who walked into the room, and he used impeccable logic, and he pressed his case in a polite but logical manner. And so I'm like you, David. I highly would love to see more dialogue, but based on honesty, not on the be nice, the sugar saccharine smile that's always become, it's why it has become to typify the church today. It's that everyone is so afraid of not being nice. And so as a result, what the church prefers today, just speaking here in Nashville, are sweet lies opposed to bitter truth. Because the whole business is, a man came to one of my talks one time, and when he came into the room, I said, we have ourselves a Nigerian Muslim here. Well, he was Nigerian and he was a former Muslim. When he got through, he gave his question, which was, as sometimes happens, a statement. And he said several things about Islam, one of which you've just mentioned, that when there's a few Muslims, it's nice, and later on it gets not so nice, and you'll have the Sharia and you will suffer. And he said, now then, I want to talk to you about your Christianity. He says, in America, Christianity has become something you do for 1 hour on Sunday, so you feel good for 7 days. So what he's saying is that Christianity here in Nashville, I don't know what it's like anywhere else, has become sort of a religious hedonism. No one will be offended. No one is going to be offended. No one's going to be corrected. The gospel, like I say, is be nice and whatever, but we don't want to offend anyone. My goodness gracious, I've told this to more than one group of Christians. I've learned as I've grown older not to judge a man by his friends, but by his enemies. And as Christians, who are your enemies? Because Jesus had enemies. Jesus was hated. I mentioned earlier all the names that I'm called because I speak the truth about Islam: bigot, hater, KKK, neo-Nazi, merchant of hate, on and on and on. It would be interesting, David, for you and me to compare insults sometimes and see who has, the one who has the most insults could buy lunch. But I tell my audiences, I am proud of the fact that I'm hated. Why? Because it means I'm making the right enemies. And these Christians that go to these dialogues don't want anybody to be their enemy. They've relegated evil as to something that you just haven't been nice enough. So these are some of my comments about idiot compassion. And what I'm saying here is this: the problem with dialogues is not that the Muslims are clever, not that the Muslims are deceitful, not that the Muslims are charming, very charming. The problem is not that Islam is so strong, but Christianity has become so weak, so pale, and so, I hate to say this, almost useless in anything. When you've reduced everything down to be nice, you've now got a one-trick pony. And by the way, I've got nothing against nice, but I will point this out to you. Jesus was a kind man, but he was not a nice man. So those are some of my observations about the dialogues and just talking about what you said. But when a man first explained the concept of idiot compassion to me, it just stuck in my brain. And that's what we see at these dialogues, is idiot compassion. And it is the most foolish kind of compassion, because what it's leading to here in Tennessee is that children who have Christian parents, some of them are now converting to Islam or marrying Muslims because no one has told them any different. Because, you see, the minister wouldn't want to tell a woman what the Sharia concept of a wife is because someone might be offended. And so as a result, there's more suffering that comes about. Sometimes in life you have to take a little toughness in the beginning so it'll work out well in the end, because where we're headed right now has a bitter end.
You are absolutely correct, and what you're calling idiot compassion. I mean, think about it. You got two kind of ways you can look at it. You can have a religious concern about Islam. You could have a political concern about Islam. You could be like me and have both. But if you have a religious concern about Islam, okay, it's false, right? It's not true. Muhammad is not a prophet. He is not guiding people actually to the truth. And so what would you do? You would expose him as a false prophet, as CL is doing on Saturday. Or you could have if you have the political, if your focus is political, I mean, people are being killed and slaughtering, and all you can do is defend it here in the United States. Your most brilliant idea is to defend the killing and slaughtering of all kinds of groups. And so, in other words, it would be one thing if you were defending Hinduism and worrying about Hindus. There you might have the religious objection. You might disagree with Hinduism, but at least people aren't just being slaughtered wholesale over it. And so if you want to do that, but really you've got, pastor after pastor after pastor. What do we need to do about Islam in the world? We need to guard it from any sort of criticism. What's the end game here? Do you think ISIS and Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab and all these groups are gonna be won over by that? No, they're going to continue. It's going to continue. It's going to spread until people over there get sick of standing against it, because it just leads to more bloodshed. And then what? And then you've got tons more followers of this ideology. And then what? What are you hoping to achieve other than handing this problem off to your children and grandchildren and letting them deal with a much bigger, much more serious problem? All right, we have to take another break in a couple of minutes. Wanted to get to a caller real quick before the break. We have Bill on the line. Hi, Bill, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, how's it going?
It's pretty good. Thanks for helping me out here. And my question is, I'm trying to figure out what the Muslim books are. I understand it's the Quran, Hadith, and Sirah. Did I say that last word right?
Yeah.
Is there a book called the Sirah?
It's more of a genre. It's like so. But by the way, was that your question? Was that it? The sort of sources of Islam?
Well, no. I wanted to know which ones are authored, that they don't tweak it for the Western ears.
Okay.
I have the Quran by Usama, but I need to know which translations of the Hadith and that other category.
Okay, well, yeah, so on the issue of the sources, and again, we have to take a break, so this will be short, but you have, as you know, the Quran. This is believed to be the direct word of Allah. So even though, we talk about Muhammad, Muhammad is not the author of this book according to Islam. So according to Islam, Muhammad was a mailman with respect to the Quran. So it gets delivered to the angel Gabriel passes it on to Muhammad passes it on to his followers, it eventually gets compiled into the book. So this supposedly is not the teachings of Muhammad, even though Muhammad taught it. It's not his teachings, it's the word of Allah. But in the Quran, Muslims are told, chapter 465, for instance, to obey Muhammad's decisions. They're told in chapter 33, verse 21, that Muhammad is the pattern of conduct for them. So you need, as a Muslim, to follow more than just the Quran. And so what happened is Muslims, according to the official story, Muslims started passing down everything they could remember about Muhammad, and they would pass it from person to person to person. These things weren't collected in the collections that we have now. The major collections, Sahih al-Bukhari, for instance, weren't put together in book form until about 2 centuries after Muhammad died. So these are fairly late sources, but they are also regarded as authoritative. The only reason you should reject an authentic tradition that goes back supposedly to Muhammad is if it just flat out contradicts the Quran in some way. And even then you're supposed to try and figure out how to reconcile. But so what you have is, you have the Quran, that's the word of Allah. Then you have the teachings and example of Muhammad. These things are recorded in the Hadith and the Sirah. The difference between the Hadith and the Sirah is sort of one of methodology of the scholars. The Hadith, if you get the collections, are arranged kind of topically. So it'll be sort of everything Muhammad said or did about this particular, let's say marriage or something like that. And you'll have a section on there. Jihad, there'll be a jihad section if you go to the Hadith. There'll be a big section on jihad that gives everything Muhammad said about jihad. Whereas the Sirah are arranged more like we think of as a biography. So the Sirah is, yeah, what's that, Bill?
Bill, the caller on the line, Bill, if you will send me an email to bw@politicalislam.com, I will give you 3 PDFs of a Quran, a Sirah, and a Hadith that you can easily read. Mm-hmm. Just send me an email at bw@politicalislam.com, and I'll just give it to you.
Yeah, and so Bill, he can give you that, and as well, if you go to usually Salafi translators, they tend not to water things down. They might try to adjust some things to avoid something embarrassing. But for instance, you can go to Darussalam publishers. They've translated all the major collections of Hadith. Might not be perfect. You might have to worry about them here or there. But you can get an idea. You can certainly get an idea of what Muhammad taught, because they're making these for Muslims. They're making these collections for Muslims. All right, so I hope that answers your question. And one day, if you're interested, we can have a full discussion, a full program on the Muslim sources. We can actually bring out the different collections: Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. We can show you what Ibn Asaq is. We can show you what At-Tabari is, so that people can get an idea of all these sources. That's the sort of thing that you would like to see covered in interfaith dialogues. Actual useful information rather than deception. All right, we have to take a break. Again, we are having a fundraiser. This is a fundraising week, so if you wanted to contribute to have more programs like this so that the network can continue, this would be a good time to sign up. And we have to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a moment here on the Trinity Channel.
Have you been looking for new live shows where you can call in and tell us what's on your mind? Trinity Channel will be airing live shows starring Brother Osama on December 15th through 18th. For more information, visit us at www.trinitychannel.com. And remember, we're looking forward to hearing from viewers like you. The Big Give Week begins December 14th through the 20th, where we can join together to launch the Trinity Channel to Europe and the Middle East through Hotbird Satellite. There will be live shows hosted by Christian apologetic speakers to help spread the gospel to all nations. Together, we can reach this goal through prayer and donations. Remember, this is the Big Give Week.
Welcome back to the Trinity Channel. CL, you had some information to share about the fundraiser.
Yes, I just wanted to give a little note and a little detail on the issue of fundraising. It's very important. You see the set, you see us live is being shot through cameras. There's all types of equipment in the back. This stuff is not free, and the Trinity Channel wants to expand. The Trinity Channel wants to expand into different areas, going into Europe, going into the Middle East. I'm sure you would love to see these type of programs being beamed into Europe and the Middle East, but to do that takes funds. To do that also requires more equipment, more technicians, the equipment that's already here to be replaced, additional equipment on top of the equipment that we have now. One of the, in particular, there's a piece of equipment called the TriCaster. A piece of equipment called the TriCaster is very important that needs to be replaced, that needs to be upgraded. Trinity Channel wants to do different deals and make partnerships with like Comcast to have fiber optic connections to be able to send these programs out. That requires money. Also, once you expand, once you get into Europe and the Middle East and you get all this equipment, well, what are you going to show people? You're going to show people the same shows that have been taped 3 or 4 years ago over and over again? No, we have to create new shows. So new shows have to be made. So we're just really hoping that you will pray and ask yourself and see if you can stand with the Trinity Channel and help expand this type of message to go across the world.
And just to give you an idea about how important this is, once Muhammad had the followers, he subjugated. He kept subjugating until he died. And then his followers took over. And then Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, they continued expanding and subjugating. Islam spread. It kept spreading east until they reached India and China, where they were eventually stopped. And they kept spreading west across northern Africa until they got up into Europe, until they were actually stopped. But Islam expands and subjugates as long as it is able to. And the result of people defending Islam from criticism over the past several decades is now you have radical, violent groups who understand they're in a position where we're going to keep our mouth closed while they carry out Muhammad's commands. And they can rape, they can kill, they can chop off heads, they can carry out all the different kinds of jihad. They can do that, and we are just going to be very, very quiet. And not only will we do that, but every time there's a terrorist attack, every time ISIS does another beheading, what do our leaders do? What do politicians do? What does the media do? They rush to defend Islam. A Muslim, we are in such a bad situation. A Muslim tomorrow can publicly chop a man's head off, and we will praise his religion for it. If another building in the United States were blown up tomorrow, the first message is Islam is wonderful, Islam is great. The more violent they do, the more we will defend Islam from criticism. That's the situation. What that means is people aren't going to get the truth from our politicians. They're not going to get it from the mainstream media. They're not even getting it in many cases from their Christian pastors, as Dr. Warner has pointed out. And so it's a very limited group of people. We have very limited resources in defending the truth and opposing jihad and opposing Sharia. And it's not just the Trinity Channel. There are websites and there are speakers. There are people like Dr. Warner going around speaking. But the point is, if you're concerned about jihad and Sharia and you want the gospel shared, you should be supporting those who are doing it. Well, first, you should be doing it yourself. You should be doing anything in your power. But one of those things is, if we have a network that's actually doing that, we need to see those networks expand in order to carry on that work. It has to be done. We don't want to just pass this problem, this huge global jihad problem in Sharia, on to our children. We want to do something about that. We have that opportunity, and we're hoping that you will support. Now, I understand we have a bunch of callers on the line. All right, who do we have on? Who do we have on first?
Hello.
Hi.
This is Ross. How you folks doing tonight?
Hi, we're good.
How you doing?
All right. If you guys really want to get in a sticky wicket, what I want to know is why Trinity Channel and TCT and all the other quote Christian channels don't expose the Catholic Jesuit connection to the jihad and slaughter that's going on. Because if you look at the Jesuit fourth vow, it's the most condensed version of jihad that's ever been promulgated on planet Earth, and they're just using the Islamists as a front for the new Inquisition. The Catholic Church has never recanted on its Council of Trent, and the Council of Vatican II is the very thing you're talking about now, where we have interfaith dialogue. Well, what they've done is they've infiltrated the Christian Church, and if you bring up the truth about the Catholic Church involvement with Islam today, well, you're called a kook and nutcase and radical. So if you want to strip a hornet's nest and get my support, start bringing in the Catholic Church's involvement, because the Catholic Pope just went over and worshipped in a mosque 3 or 4 days ago, and it's in the paper. How can this be?
All right. Thank you, Rod. And think about that, because that is I'd say a good example of the problem. Yes, there are certainly disagreements between Protestants and Catholics and Eastern Orthodox, and it's certainly good to have those kind of discussions. And there are debates on all of these issues. But I mean, think about it. We're sitting back here, right? We could be talking about Mormonism. We could be talking about Scientology. We could be talking about all kinds of things. But I mean, if I turn on the news, I see heads getting chopped off. It seems like we should think, boy, that's something we need to deal with. And what do we have? Well, let's deal with that. Let's focus on on this problem of global jihad subjugating people, subjugating Christians, subjugating everyone who gets in their way. And no, stop doing that. Start talking about the Catholic Church. I don't know. It kind of sounds silly to me to say stop talking about the jihad and I want you to talk about this other thing. No, I mean, guess what? I disagree with people across the board. I disagree with all kinds of people. But when I think, how am I going to spend my time? It certainly seems like I should be doing something about the group that's chopping people's heads off in the streets. So Rod, again, there are plenty of ministries out there that are dealing with any issue that you'd be interested in. So if your interest is not this, I hate to say it, but you might want to support a ministry that is focusing on what you are most interested in. For those who are very concerned about Sharia and jihad, as we are, we need to be having this topic, having this discussion every single day until people get it through their heads. And that would be my 2 cents on that. All right, we have who do we have on the line next?
Hello.
Hi.
This is Philip speaking.
Hi, Philip. How you doing?
Greetings in the precious name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Oh, thank you, brother.
Brother David, and Brother C.L. Edwards, you two are heavyweight champions of Christianity against Islam.
Oh, thanks. Hey, don't forget Dr. Warner here. He's been
Dr. Warner.
He's been running circles around us for a long time.
Dr. Warner, I'm a fan of you. I go through your website, and I'm really a fan of you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment, one-word comment about this interfaith dialogue. This interfaith dialogue is nothing but a hoax. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Muhammad had an a so-called interfaith dialogue, a kind of a interfaith dialogue in Medina when Wadi Najran Christians came under the leadership of Bishop Abdul Masih. And some surahs of Surah Al-Imran have come as the outcome of that dialogue which the Christians had with Muhammad in Medina, in the Grand Mosque of Medina. And the Christians thoroughly examined Muhammad's so-called revelation and rejected it. And they went back without being convinced about Muhammad's prophethood. So all these interfaith dialogue has been a failure, and it is being carried out for the advantage of Muslims in the Western world. Can we have an interfaith dialogue in a Muslim country? That's my, yeah.
Well, you could certainly go to a Muslim country and praise Islam. So I think a lot of our pastors might be welcome over there.
Yeah, okay.
Since that's all they're going to do. Dr. Warner, what do you think about this?
I would not want to go to Pakistan to debate the issue. Let me just say that, having spoken with Pakistani Christians.
Yeah.
But I want to just briefly revert to the previous caller and say something. One of the things that every Christian school should teach is the history of what happens to Christianity when Islam invades. And one of the most tragic things is that Christians, instead of focusing on their common enemy, start picking at each other. So that's just an aside I wanted to make, because this has happened for 1,400 years. We need to focus on the fact that there is an enemy who is out to annihilate us, not just make us uncomfortable. But yeah, we should be having real dialogue here, and the gentleman, of course, is correct. If David and I showed up to debate in Saudi Arabia, I don't think that we would get to do much at all, maybe even survive.
Yeah, and just to tie that back in with the Trinity Channel, one of the interesting developments has been technology over the past, really, I mean, I'd say decade and a half, in that for centuries the Muslim world has been closed off, in the sense that if you're going to go there and start refuting Islam and telling people the truth about what Islam teaches, you're going to get your head chopped off. But we are actually in a position in our age to reach Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Iran, Iraq. We can reach these countries through technology, and that's why I've been making YouTube videos for years. Dr. Warner also makes YouTube videos, but one of the most interesting things I saw this several years ago was my friend Nabil and I made a video titled "The Original Burn the Quran Day." Right? This is when everyone was flipping out over Terry Jones saying he's going to burn a Quran. But we made a video that was about the original Burn the Quran Day, which is when Uthman gathered all the Quranic manuscripts together and burned them all to cover up all the differences so he could issue an official version. And Muslims just don't know any of this, right? You talk to a Muslim, they have no clue, even though it's in their main sources. But we made a video out of it. We were just goofing off. And we made a video out of this, and we posted it on YouTube. And after a short while, it had about 100,000 hits. This was years ago. It has way more now. But when it reached about 100,000 hits, I clicked on YouTube Analytics, and it showed me where people had watched it. And it's listing, most were from the United States, and then Great Britain, and then Canada, and then Australia, and so on. But it got down to Pakistan, and it said 3.8% Pakistan. And I thought, 3.8% of 100,000? That's 3,800 people. That's 3,800 people in Pakistan. I just told about the history of the Quran. I could not do that in Pakistan, right? If I went over there telling them the history of the Quran, even though I'm quoting it right out of their books about Uthman burning these manuscripts and so on, I would not make it. I would not make it to 3,800 people before I was locked up on blasphemy or just annihilated by a mob. But we're in a position where we can reach lots of people through technology. So I encourage people, get active on whatever, Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, or again, supporting the Trinity Channel, because these videos, even if people aren't watching directly or watching live, they get uploaded to YouTube and then they end up around the world. So we have, in other words, we have an opportunity that people for the past 14 centuries have not had. We can go right into homes in Saudi Arabia, in Pakistan, and tell them the truth. People in previous generations did not have that opportunity. We have it now, and I would say, woe unto us if we do not take full advantage of this. CL, I saw you squirming in your seat. You had something to add?
I just wanted to add to when you were talking about the burning of the Quran, that part of the whole narration about that, why that was justified, was that one, that the Muslims were all going to start fighting each other over these different dialects and translations.
Yeah, no, why would they do that, right?
that was one justification for it. And the other justification being that those who had memorized the Quran may die in jihad. So one government-sanctioned Quran was created, and everybody else's Quran was taken away and ordered to be destroyed. And they sent out notifications to the governors in all the different areas, don't let anyone else recite whatever they have with them. They have to recite the one Quran that we are issuing out for the whole nation.
But I mean, think about that mentality. We need to deceive, right? We're going to destroy all the evidence. We're going to destroy all the evidence here for the sake of unity, to prevent there from being problems. Why? Because if there are disagreements, and your group, they already know they know what's going on by this time, right? They know what happens when they had disagreements over the leadership, right? They know what the problem is. If we have any sort of issue we disagree on, we're going to start fighting and killing over. And so we need to do something about this. Well, let's just destroy all existing copies of the Quran and issue an official version so that we won't start killing and slaughtering over that. But that's the mentality. You cannot have disagreements without killing each other. We have a completely different mindset. We can have disagreements all over the place and not kill each other. And then you have groups like CARE and ISA, and they come over and they're presenting their own view, namely, you can't criticize us. Why? Because that will make us victims, and it's going to lead to hate crimes and killing and slaughtering. No, it's not. No, it's not, because we don't do that. Yeah, you could find an individual who does that, but there are not going to be any violent riots in the streets over criticizing Islam. So stop bringing the mentality that goes back to the time of Muhammad, and actually earlier. This is a tradition where if we have disagreements, we got to kill over it. No, my Muslim friends, you should be inviting people to criticize Islam. If you really believe in real tolerance, you should be stepping on stage and saying, criticize us all you want, because we know you're not going to kill us over it. We're not going to kill you over it. We can all get along, and you can say whatever you want about our prophet. That's what I would love to see. But we only have about 9 or 10 minutes left, and I see we have several calls, so we're going to have to take these rapid fire. So we'll take some questions and then see who's going to answer it real quick. All right, who do we have on the line first? Robert, are you there?
Robert? Yes,
Hi, Robert.
Okay, I just got a question. I've been studying over Islamic history, and I cannot find it, but maybe you guys know. Is there any Islamic dynasty that did not come to power by using the methods of ISIS? I mean, was there ever, like, for instance, the Rashiduns, did they ever hand over power peacefully to the Umayyads? Or the Umayyads ever hand over power peacefully to the Abbasids? Do you see what I'm saying? Or is the ISIS model the only model for gaining a new caliphate in Islam?
Dr. Warner, what do you think about that one?
I think that in general he's correct. There were several different caliphates, so I'm not going to say that all of them, but in general, violence was, well, look, Muhammad's own example was, how did he become the first caliph? Well, he rose to power through violence. Abu Bakr, what was his first task once he became, I'm just going through the right, I got it. His first thing was to secure Islam by killing apostates. So, and then of course Ali was involved in the civil war. So no, I think that violence and creation of power within Islam is sunnah.
Yeah, and so here's the idea. Yeah, you certainly find this recurring pattern in the history of Islam where, I mean, think, ISIS right now, what they're doing. Apart from modern technology and modern weapons, they're doing exactly what Muhammad and especially Abu Bakr did, because Abu Bakr had this, this great cleansing. So yeah, you have the model, and basically any Muslim who isn't following that model in some way, well, that really wouldn't be Islamic. So a Muslim group could come along tomorrow and doing things in a completely different way. Even if it were successful, it wouldn't be Islamic. So you have the pattern laid down by Muhammad. That's what Islam is, and yeah, we've seen it, and it's going to keep coming up over and over again. ISIS could be defeated completely tomorrow. You would see that same pattern again very, very soon, because that is the pattern of Muhammad. All right, next we have Angela on the line. Angela, are you there?
It's actually Angel.
Oh, okay, sorry.
How are you? My brothers, I love you in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. I pray that his hand be the armor that is around your body and his word be the sword that is in your hand. I wanted to make a statement regarding what Bill Warner was speaking about, and you guys as well. I think that Christianity has become weak. There are many who are very much afraid to speak the truth to other people, whether it be in a more hostile environment or even in an environment that isn't. But I think where Christianity has failed is to properly educate Christians on what the doctrine actually explains. I've come to notice that a lot of people who eventually turn to Islam, I have some friends who've turned away from Christianity and gone to Islam, they do not understand the doctrine of the Trinity, or they do not understand the messages that Jesus actually gave in the Bible. And I think that's one of the major problems that we have. We can't defend ourselves when somebody comes and tells us, how can a son be the father? How can a father be the son?
Yeah.
And at that point, that huge, I guess, confusion and not being able to properly understand it, it pulls us away from the true faith.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And the recipe for a convert to Islam would be ignorance of Christianity plus ignorance of Islam. That seems to be the pattern I always find of Christian converts, so people who grow up in a Christian household and then convert to Islam. When I ask them questions about Christianity, they never have a clue about basic Christian doctrine, right? They'll understand a couple of, like they'll know the term Trinity, but they do not understand basic Christian doctrine. And then when I start questioning them about Islam, they don't have any clue about that either, right? Because the ignorance, what it does is it allows a Muslim preacher to come and say pretty much whatever he wants. So if you're a woman and you're interested in women's rights, that allows the Muslim preacher to come and say, Muhammad was a champion of women's rights, he's the greatest feminist in history. If you're in an atmosphere of ignorance because the church has not informed you of what Islam actually teaches, again, we think that people tell us the truth about their religions, right? We assume that when a Christian's telling us about Christianity, he's sincere and he means what he says. We assume that Jews are telling us the truth about Judaism. With Islam, yes, the Muslim who's talking might believe that. But the point is, if he knows what Islam really teaches, he's going to understand that he gets to seriously misrepresent it in order to win the convert and think that he's doing something good for you, even though he's making up all kinds of things. So if you're interested in science, Islam is the Quran's a scientific masterpiece, and Muhammad knew all kinds of scientific insights centuries ahead of his time. They're only being confirmed today. It doesn't matter what you believe, that's what they're going to preach. And the solution to that is not being ignorant of Islam. And so how shocking is it that people are leaving Christianity because they don't know Christian doctrine, because they haven't been informed, and they're becoming Muslims because they don't know what Islam actually teaches and they don't know anything about Muhammad. And the solution of many churches is, well, let's not actually preach Christian doctrine because that might offend the Muslims in our dialogue, and let's not tell the truth about Islam because that would hurt the feelings of the Muslims there, and so let's continue the atmosphere of ignorance, and that's the best thing we can do for our children. I mean, this is, you couldn't be more stupid if you tried. You could not be more dumb. If you just sat down, how dumb could I possibly be? You could not come up with anything better than what we're doing. What do you think, Seal?
Well, unfortunately, I have to agree.
And whoa. Before I forget, because this is relevant, you grew up in a sort of Christian household, yes, and converted to Islam. How well informed were you on Christian doctrine and Islamic doctrine when you made that life-changing decision?
I didn't know half of what I know now about Christian doctrine. I remember as a child asking a family member, how could Jesus be God and the Son of God at the same time? And the person looked at me like I had just, asked them, how
about quantum mechanics or something.
Yeah. So, and then that question never got answered at all for the rest of my life. So no. And as far as Islam, unfortunately, I went to a high school where I was made to read Malcolm X's biography, and Islam was, one of the great world religions. Mm-hmm. 3 great faiths of the Abrahamic, whatever.
Now, let me ask this: if you had known Christian doctrine and if you had known the actual history of Muhammad, would you have converted?
No.
Notice there was no hesitation there, ladies and gentlemen. And that's true, I would say, if not every single convert, certainly of most, because they're converting based on ignorance. All right, we only have about 2 minutes left. We have a caller on the line. Should we still get to this caller? All right, caller, we're going to have to do this rapid fire. Larry, what's your question? You got to be quick.
King James Version, St. Luke, chapter 22, verses 35 through 37. Does this, is Jesus telling the Christians to physically defend themselves or their homes or their family?
Well, you could interpret this different ways, and this is kind of off topic. I don't know if we don't have time to actually answer it, but let's go ahead and read it. And he said to them, "When I sent you out with money and a belt and a bag and sandals, you did not lack anything, did you?" They said, "No, nothing." And he said to them, "But now whoever has a money belt is to take it along, likewise a bag, and whoever has no sword is to sell his coat and buy one. For I tell you, this which is written must be fulfilled in me." And he was numbered with the transgressors, for that which is refers to me has its fulfillment. So you have two basic interpretations. One is, yes, Jesus is telling people that they can defend themselves, that they can have a weapon to defend themselves. You have another, and that he's saying, get a weapon. Why? Because he says that there's a fulfillment of the prophecy there. For I tell you that this which is written must be fulfilled in me, and he was numbered with the transgressors. So Jesus is going to be numbered with transgressors. And what happened when the soldiers come? He's got followers who are holding weapons. One of them, Peter, uses it. Jesus says, hey, put your sword away. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. So you can say that Jesus is giving a basic principle that Christians can defend themselves. The alternative position is that the context there is have some weapons because the prophecy is that I'm going to be numbered among transgressors, and so I'm going to be numbered among lawbreakers and rebels, which is exactly what happens. They show up and a couple of people have weapons and so on. But he certainly wasn't advocating armed rebellion against the Roman Empire. So I'm not saying which one is correct. Both of them would fit the context there. All right, we are out of time, I'm afraid. I wanted to give Dr. Warner the last couple of minutes, but we are out of time, so we're going to have to get back to you on a different day. Dr. Warner, thank you. And thank you, CL. And those of you out there, it comes down to individuals, ladies and gentlemen, and there are a lot of problems in this world, and there are a lot of problems in the church. There may be few of us, but we all have a part to play. We hope you've learned something. We hope you'll go out there and speak the truth. Whether you're just defending the gospel, whether you're refuting deception, we need to get rid of the ignorance, and we hope you'll join with us in doing that. See you next time here on the Trinity Channel.